Hello, friends. I am Siegfried Trent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and master of manuscripts for Sig Trent Games. Today, I'm going to be telling you what's going on with Sig Trent Games in week 34. I will talk a little bit of game design advice and game mastering advice, and I will talk about my life and what I've been playing lately. All right, let's start out with Sig Trent Games. What's going on this week? Well, I had a plan. I did not carry out with the plan. The plan was to write on a bunch of different projects. What ended up happening is I mostly just worked on Shotgun Fantasy. I started writing, I was on a tear, I got a bunch of stuff done, I got really excited about what I was doing with magic items and spells and everything, and I just wanted to keep rolling, and so I was like, all right, I'm shifting my priorities. I am going to try and get as close as I can done to a finished first draft for Shotgun Fantasy this week, and then I will shift gears and work on other projects next week. And so that's what I did, and I'm very, very close, and I'm going to keep going until I hit that goal. I will hit that goal this week. So really excited about that. Right now I just have some work to do in the appendix. I've got some magic treasure generation to use the magic item system, and I need to write some example magic items, which should be really easy. So I'm going to get that done, maybe even tonight, I'm hoping. And then I will have a first draft complete. Then the next step is to get to a final draft complete, in which I'm going to go over, do my self-editing, review everything that I've written, make sure that there's no missing pieces, make sure that I've addressed all the little notes that I provide myself, fine-tune names of things, find spelling errors, find grammatical problems, just find writing that could be a little bit better than it is, and go through that whole thing and polish it all up. And that'll take me another week or two, and then it is off to formal editing. I'm lining up my editor, and they say they are ready and ready to do the job. So we'll get into that. That'll take a few weeks, and in the meantime, I'll be pursuing all the art that we're going to need for the layout so that everything can come together at the right moment, and Anne can make a spiffy-looking book, and we'll build well on our way. So my goal is still try to get it out before the end of the year here in PDF format so I can promote it over the holidays and in the coming year, and maybe go to some conventions and do all that kind of thing. So getting pretty excited. That's all ramping up really well. Also, hero sheets are progressing. Anne's got most of the prototypes done for the Shotgun Fantasy version of hero sheets. So that'll be free to everybody who already has the hero sheets, but if you want to get that package, you can get those cool character sheets as well. Also, doing contract work this week. Still got that going on, but I did kind of push that aside. I'm going to have to make up for that next week to stay on schedule. Now, my weekly goals for that contract work, I always try to have a goal that's over what I need to do, so that when a week like this happens where I need to shift priorities, I'm still in pretty good shape. I'll be just a little behind, but I can catch up next week and get back ahead of the game, which would be great. Night Magics is going to see work really soon here. As soon as Shotgun Fantasy goes off to editing, I'm going to bring in a whole bunch of content from Shotgun Fantasy into Night Magics, all the core rules, core magic system, core magic item system, all that kind of stuff will be in that book as well, along with a different set of classes geared towards urban fantasy and a different set of spells based on the ones that LPJ had provided to me, which are pretty cool and fun. But, you know, some new work of my own and some cool ideas in there. And that'll be Night Magics, which will be a fun urban fantasy book that has some of the same core rules and elements that Shotgun Fantasy has in its fantasy section. Overall, the two are very different books, but they will share some common rules and mechanics that people have been really excited about, and that I think I've got dialed in really, really nicely. All the playtests were going great, so just really excited about all that. I hope you are too. Be sure to let other people know. Soon I will be in media mode, and I'm going to try to do interviews, and I'm going to get out and run games for people, and we're going to do all kinds of stuff to get the word out about Shotgun Fantasy so that people can enjoy it. And Sig Trent Games can make a little money to work on our next project. All right. What else is going on here? Game design tip of the week. Let's do that. So we're going to talk about conflict encounters. Now, this is a deconstruction topic, which means it's the kind of stuff that most people take for granted. But as a game designer, a good game master, you need to think about these things, deconstruct them a little bit, so that when you are working on a game and you run into some kind of a trouble, or you're trying to design a new system, you can have these fundamentals in mind, not just as like instincts and what you're used to, but as a kind of a broken down discipline, a deconstructed set of ideas, so that you can find the elements that maybe you're missing, improve your encounter design, improve the game design for encounters, etc. So let's talk about what this is. Conflict encounters. It can include things like combat, complex social challenges, chases in everyday heroes, all kinds of things like that. Any situation that has the following key elements. All right, one, there is an end goal that you're trying to achieve. The heroes, the players, are trying to achieve something to win a combat in order to defeat their enemies, convince people to do something that they want them to do, try to win a race or a chase. Some explore a dungeon, solve a mystery. There are many examples. You've got to have some kind of an end goal that you're trying to achieve. Number two is there has to be opposition to that end goal. That can be active opposition from other characters, NPCs, things like that. Could be opposition from the environment that they're in. It could be a giant storm. There could be a vast chasm. You could be falling out of the sky, whatever it happens to be. There can be opposition in the form of a ticking clock and time pressure. Lots of kinds of oppositions, but something has to be making it difficult to achieve the goal. And finally, you need to have multiple steps. So like if it's just going to take a single roll, you just need to pass a persuasion check to get the guard to let you in. That is not a conflict encounter. It's just a mechanic. It's a moment. It doesn't really apply to these kinds of things because it's just one little thing that happens, very short part of the game. Now, those individual roles and things will be a part of a conflict encounter, but a conflict encounter has to have multiple steps that you need to get to the end goal that you are trying to achieve. I'll also say the difference between a whole adventure or a campaign, which you could say qualifies all this. This has to be like one particular scene, one situation, one area that you are in where you have this defined goal at the end of it, not the overall arc of an adventure. Those things can still apply, but that's a more complicated topic. Okay, so that's what a conflict encounter is. Let's take a look at what elements are really important to have to make it a good conflict encounter. So this is the part that really applies to game design, but it can also apply to adventure design and being a game master. So the elements that you want to have here are, one, to give every player a chance to act and be part of the conflict. And we'll just call that taking turns by default, right? That is the way that in, let's say, a classic role-playing game, you're going to give every player a chance to shine. You're going to say, hey, player A, what do you want to do? Player B, what do you want to do? Player C, what do you want to do? Player D, what do you want to do? That doesn't necessarily mean that turns have to be in a strict initiative order and everybody only gets one turn for every round, et cetera, et cetera. You can structure it differently, but you want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. If one of the players is just out of the action and not participating in any way, shape, or form, that's not as good. I mean, you can still obviously resolve the conflict, but that is not ideal. So you want to try and structure something so that everybody gets their chance to participate and be a meaningful part of reaching the goal and being involved in that conflict. All right, number two, you want to have the plot or the action unfold in stages. We can call these rounds in combat. Obviously, we're used to that, which is to say there's a time for everybody to get a chance to do something, a chance for us to encounter the opposition and the opposition to have an effect on the party, and then we can update and look at the status of the conflict as it now stands. This allows people the chance to change their tactics, change their strategy that they're going to deal with the conflict, to do a risk assessment of how close we are to our goal or how far away we are from our goal, and to react to the opposition, and just to describe and experience the drama of the conflict back and forth in the situation. So it's kind of like I talked before about pacing, where you just have this action, and then after the action, you have a moment of pause in order to reflect on the action that just happened, right? Now, again, doesn't have to be strictly combat rounds. There are many different ways to frame or couch this stages of development. Could be a ticking clock, hours in the clock as they come by, or minutes is minute 1, minute 2, minute 3, minute 4, and then minute 5, something is going to happen or not happen, right? So there are different ways that you can structure these rounds, but it's an important concept to have as part of conflict resolution. Next up is to know when you are making progress and when you are moving backwards. Now, generally, you want stories to be moving forwards most of the time, but there are times when a setback or a miniature defeat within the scope of a larger conflict is really cool and dramatic. and it's just naturally going to be part of a game system where dice are being rolled and there's random elements. So you need some way that players are going to be able to understand when they are doing better or when they are doing worse. In combat, obviously, the number of opponents that are still moving in the battlefield that are fighting you, your own party's hit points, the number of people in the party that are still standing and fighting, these are clear ways to measure the success or failure of just a straight up life or death conflict. But there are many other ways in chases and everyday heroes. We have chase points. This is just a clear scorekeeping system. That's kind of what I've summarized this step is scorekeeping. There's a clear scorekeeping system with chase points, so you know if you have more chase points than the other guys, you are winning. If they have more points than you, they are winning. You can just have a set number of successes or failures in challenge contests or skill contests or whatever it happens to be. But you need some way of keeping score. And this is important both for the player visibility, so they understand if they're in a good situation or a bad situation, and also important for the game master, of course, in moving towards the last step of conflict resolution, which is the resolution. So that's point number 4. You need to highlight the outcome of the conflict, which of the goals were met, which goals were not met, what the consequences of victory, the consequences of defeat are. These are very important elements. And it's important that the game master doesn't just brush by it. You've had this great conflict. There needs to be a satisfying resolution. Those goals have to come back around to the end of the conflict and be either met or disrupted or some combination thereof. But you've got to have that outcome. So if you have these 4 elements, taking turns so everybody's part of the action, rounds so that you can measure the success that you've had so far, scorekeeping so you have a clear way of understanding what that measurement is, and then finally the resolution where that scorekeeping comes into its final fruition and you either meet goals or don't meet goals or somewhere in between. So whenever you're going to structure an encounter that you're going to have happen, whether it be a bank heist, whether it be a combat, whether it be a bobsled race, whatever it ends up being, whatever this conflict is, it could be a debate in Parliament, right? You want to make sure that you have these core elements both in a game design that is meant to resolve these kinds of conflicts, or as a game master, if you're just on the fly creating a set of actions or systems for the players, even if there are no mechanics involved, these still apply. Highlight each player, take a moment to assess what's going on in the situation, have some way of keeping score, and it doesn't have to be a number, right? It could just be a GM description, whatever it is, and then having an outcome of the final resolution when you get to the end of the encounter. All right. So lastly, I have here just to think about this in terms of a game designer or a game master. It's kind of similar in that a game master is creating encounters on the fly or resolving encounters on the fly. A game designer is setting up a structure where they're creating an adventure where there are certain instructions for the game master to follow in order to create this framework. It's important, I think, on the game master side that you have an intuitive understanding of this stuff because you don't really have time to sit down and check these boxes of the 4 elements, right? So you want to kind of get a really good understanding in your head of what they are, and then you will naturally tend to look to highlight the character's actions. You'll naturally do a little scorekeeping and have those clear moments where you say, "Ooh, it looks like the other guys are winning right now. You better step up," right? Or, "Oh, you're crushing it. They're desperately trying to figure out a way to stop you guys." Whatever it is, that you let them know that, and then that really satisfying conclusion. That's something that comes naturally to most game masters. But I've certainly seen new people miss out on that, by failing to celebrate the victory or the loss, and making the conflict seem unimportant after it's done. And that's like the worst thing you want to do is everyone went through a whole bunch of process and then who cares what the outcome of that was. That would be terrible, right? So as a game designer, you're going to be more methodical about this, and as a game master, you're going to be a little bit more intuitive. Now, that does bring up a question. Does the player have any role in this? Yeah, absolutely. It is useful for a player to understand the structure a little bit so that you can play along. Don't hog the spotlight, right? Give the other players a chance to be part of the conflict, but definitely also don't just sort of drift into the background and wait for yourself to get pulled in to get involved. Try to find a way that you can be involved in the conflict. Understand that there is a goal at play and that your actions are going to try to meet towards that goal. and that there's going to be some kind of scorekeeping, and that you're going to want to try to strategize a little bit so that whatever that is, even if it's just role playing attitudes, that you're working towards it and trying to achieve that. And of course, revel in your victory, right? That's part of role playing. Be happy about your victories, be sad about your defeats, right? And you're just going to make the whole thing more exciting, more drama, more story, and good times. All right. So that's what I got for conflict encounters, just stuff to think about. All right, so what have I been doing and playing this week? I've been playing a game called Heroes in Might and Magic 3. If you're as old as me, you might remember that. If you are not, then you might not. And it's an older game, I want to say from the 90s. I think its first ones maybe came out in the late 80s. It started with a game called King's Bounty, and then developed from there. Basically, they're games where you have a little hero, a knight, a wizard, or whatever, and they go out and they recruit monsters. Your monsters fight other monsters in little army battles, and you'll have keeps or villages that provide economic resources, and there's a map to explore. Sometimes there's special quests to fulfill. It's not always just about beating up the enemies. Maybe you need to get a magic MacGuffin or defeat a dragon. But it's basically a 4X strategy game where you build up your resources, you build up your armies, you explore, you fight guys, and eventually you win. Might Magic 3, Heroes of Might Magic 3, to me, is probably the pinnacle of that series, and most reviewers tend to agree, but there were like 7 or 8 of these games. I forget. And it's the one, to me, where they kind of reached the peak where if you add any more detail, it becomes a little overwhelming and you start to drown in all the options, right? But on the other hand, it does have a lot of cool options of different directions you can go and different possibilities with which you can make scenarios to beat. So I've been playing that game a little bit. I found an old copy of it, bought it. I've been running it on my computer, which it works pretty well, although it's a tiny little window in the middle of my giant screen. But after you play a little while and you get over the kind of roughness of the user interface, all that sort of starts to disappear, and you're just into the game just like it was back when I played it the first time. Very engrossing, very challenging old strategy game. I set it on the second to highest difficulty, and I got my butt kicked repeatedly in the first scenario that I'm doing. I don't know that it's like an introductory scenario exactly. I don't think it's supposed to be that. It's just the first scenario of a big campaign. But I was getting rocked hard. So just beaten up over and over again. Get to a point, halfway in after a few hours and going, oh, maybe I can win, but it's going to be really tedious and boring. I really just did not take advantage of these situations correctly, and now I am under the curve, and the bad guy's just getting stronger, and I'm getting weaker. So finally, I got in there. I did beat the first scenario after many attempts. Not a lot of saves coming. I don't really like to do that. I'll do a little bit of that if it's just like, well, I'm just going to replay to the same point and just not move left instead of right. That's okay by me, but I didn't do a lot of that. I don't like to go, oh, I lost the battle. Let me retry the battle until I win. I'm not really into it. So anyway, replayed it a bunch of times. I did get a very, very narrow military victory between my main body of forces and the enemy, and that kind of broke their back, and then it was a steamroll after that. So that was kind of cool. I liked it. It came down to just the last few monsters, and my kind of minute tactics ended up pulling out the victory. So very satisfying. Also did some live role-playing with my local play group, and we play-tested Age of Vikings, which is a basic role-playing game from Chaosium. That was a lot of fun. It's not a big stretch for me to play Viking, but we were in the belly of a beast and battling parasites, and this is like fantasy Viking stuff, right, obviously. But it was really cool. I had a great time, and my character was a big, long coup. Had an overwrought sense of honor, perhaps. Anyway, I had a good time with it. And there was a character named Sigmund. I didn't pick that character, just because I was like, I'm just going to pick the character who's best in combat, because there's not very many of us, and we're going to need all the help we can get. But somebody else played that character. So I had a fun time calling somebody else Siggy, and since I'm well familiar with the name and how you shorten it, and making it a term of endearment and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. This week on No Man Ann's Twitch channel, she's been playing Crime Scene Cleaner, which is a game where you are the guy who cleans up after crimes for the mafia or any other nefarious deeds. So it's kind of like a grim power washing game. There's a little bit of murder mystery element involved to it, but mostly you're just trying to make everything nice and tidy. So I thought that was kind of a cool game. It's something I bought for Anne on Steam because she was playing Power Washer Simulator, and I saw Crime Scene Cleaner, and I'm like, well, this just seems like custom made for my wife. So she's been playing that. Apparently, they've added elements. There's a nightmare mode where your crime scene cleaner can be haunted by the ghosts of the dead and such. So I thought that was pretty awesome. And she plays a lot of horror games. So cool stuff. If you want to check that out, head over to Twitch, Nomad Ann. All right. Life in general this week, there's not a whole lot to say. My ear infection is on the mend. I can hear people again. Still undergoing treatment for it because if you stop treating it, even after you feel normal, it can come back. I have experience with that. You don't want that to happen, so still treating that. Writing like crazy. But it's been a pretty strong couple of weeks. I've been staying up till like 4 a.m., which isn't always a good idea to do. I may have to ease off the throttle a little bit on that, but it's actually been really fun. I've been enjoying it, so we'll keep going at it as long as I don't feel like I'm burning out, right? Because if I start to feel like burning out, that's no good. I don't play that game. I just go when I'm feeling the passion, right? But other than that, it's all systems go for the most part. I'm having a good time, working hard. Hopefully, the hard work will pay off at some point. Not sure about that, but I try not to worry about that too much. So I hope you guys are all doing great out there, and we will see you next week. Good gaming, everybody. Bye bye.